How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue today on September 19 with Scott Berdahl, the CEO and co-founder of Snowline Gold Corp, a gold exploration company with a large discovery in the Yukon territories of northwestern Canada. Who's not here with us today, though, is your financial advisor. This conversation is not going to include any recommendations to buy nor sell anything. It's going to be just a talk, a casual talk between two people who you've probably never met. So for as far as you as a listener or viewer are concerned, this is going to be just that, a conversation that's general and impersonal in nature, as well as one that will include no financial nor professional advice of any sorts. And it's definitely not a conversation that you want to use as independent research, because it's also going to include a lot of forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. Please take the minute to pause the video and read the full warnings that are on your screen right now, because this sector, this industry, the mineral exploration, development, and mining industries are among the highest risk industries out there. So if you care about money and you don't like losing it, please do more research by visiting setter.com and analyzing the company's official filings, as well as consult a professional investment advisor before deciding, before making your own decision in the end. That all said, Snowline Gold Corp has a market cap of around $670 million, give or take, spread over 144 million shares outstanding. That makes it about a $4.60 stock. And with about 8.3 million options and 8.7 million warrants, that makes for about 161 million fully diluted shares. About a quarter of those shares are owned by the management and other insiders, 28% to be specific, so over a quarter. 11% is owned by institutions, 6% is owned by one individual, that being Keith Neumeyer. And then since not too long ago, 9.9% is owned by B2 Gold, resulting in a 45% retail ownership. The options and warrants are all in the money, by the way, at the time of recording of this video, and counted up, they could result in about $30 million of cash flowing into the company over the next months and years, really. As of 2 weeks ago, the company had no debt and about $44 million in cash after a recent financing, which they hoped to raise $15 million, but they had the luxury of getting oversubscribed, and they raised $16.5 million. Snowline has been quite the success story and an explorer's dream, really, at least so far. And it's also been the speculator's dream, because its stock has done an over 25x from bottom to top. And I'm trying to figure out what's really happening on here today, and whether this was a sustainable run or not, or whether it has a whole lot more to go. We'll see. I won't be doing the long form company overview as I usually do, because I interviewed Scott about give or take a year ago, and excuse me, we talked at length about anything and everything, from how they found the company, how they got their hands on the pieces of ground that they have through the First Nations there, spin out potential, and much more. So I'll make sure to link to that interview somewhere. But for now, I'll be shutting up and welcoming Scott. Sir, thank you for investing your time with me.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure is all mine, of course. And as I mentioned, a lot has happened in the last 10 or 12 months, because if my counting skills were as sharp as never, you've had over 30 news releases in that period. And the most recent one was some more assays from your ongoing drill program, and they were good results at first. I mean, every other junior out there would be begging for results like the ones that you have. So good results might be even an understating. But the market didn't like them, and the stock has fallen some 10% or so since. So talk to me about that. Were you happy with those results, and what do you think the market didn't like?
Yeah, no, we were very happy with those results. We were testing, most of those holes were testing the edges of the system as we understand it. And they came back very strong, and in some cases even extend the edge of the system, particularly in the north and the northeast. So we have, and that's chasing that kind of near surface mineralized zone even further than we knew to chase it to date. So that was really encouraging. And then our hole 45 in that last release, it averaged 1.1 grams over 518 meters. That also carried mineralization to depth really well. That's about a 200-meter step back from a hole in the previous release, which averaged 2.5 grams over 554 meters, both of these from surface. And so these holes are carrying grade to depth in various parts of the intrusion, whereas we'd previously thought, okay, there might be a floor to mineralization. Now we're seeing places where it's open to depth as well. So they not only grow the size of the envelope, but they demonstrate areas where we can potentially expand the zone of mineralization. So it's an exciting result for us. And yeah, as far as the market reaction goes, I think it's just really a sign of the broader sector. That not everyone has their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the exploration industry in general, in the gold space in general, and and ultimately, stock markets and stock trajectories are noisy things. There's no clean, smooth, linear path towards a higher market cap. There are bursts of excitement and bursts of depression, but the underlying story from our end is fundamentally and steadily growing.
It's good that you're not sort of getting hung up on the everyday stock price movement. I think as a CEO of a rather large now company, you might go crazy if you do. And you also have 19 more holes to be released, probably counting as you're currently, as we're speaking, the drills are turning. So what is sort of the timeline and outlook on releasing those? Is that sort of a couple of months thing, or are you expecting something soon-ish?
Both. We have had a steady flow of assays off to the lab throughout the season. And so we expect to get more in, and as you said, we still have multiple drills. We have 3 drills turning on site at present, and so we are expecting results to keep coming in for some time to come.
And the main idea, what you're doing right now, is it mainly targeted at figuring out the extent of what you have over there, or are you already thinking about potentially next year, or I don't know, maybe even sooner, releasing an official resource estimate?
So I guess I'll jump on the first part of that first. We're doing a few things there where we have drilled multiple targets in addition to Valley. We've drilled more holes at our Gracie target and first ever holes on the Reed and Cujo targets, as well as first ever drill programs on 2 of our projects in the southwestern Yukon. So these are orogenic gold systems at Cliff and Tosh, and so we're still awaiting results from all of those programs. And at Valley specifically, our drilling has been focused on. We're still exploring there, and so we've been focused on better delineating especially the higher grade zone in the western part of the intrusion. And last year was all about defining the size of the ballpark, essentially, with really aggressive step outs. Our first step out in the intrusion was 340 meters. So that's pretty atypical. And then we stepped that far out again. And basically, we were operating on a scale of kilometers. And so while some have kind of written off this season as infill, it's still very much exploration. Just because we drilled, a kilometer over there doesn't mean we're infilling per se. And what we have found in places where, you would call it infill, we're finding better grades. We've had, for example, a hole here, 2 grams per ton, a hole here, 2 grams per ton, drilling between them, and we're seeing 5 grams per ton from the surface. So, it's on the one hand, it's infill, but that's the best kind of infill and ultimately exploration. If you're adding ounces in between previously existing holes. We're definitely charging towards a resource, and it's the type of system that we don't need to drill a whole lot to get to a resource. But at the end of the day, we're still exploring out there. We still have open ends of this system. We still have a lot to figure out. So we'll probably want to throw more meters at it before getting anything onto the table and come to it with a more holistic understanding of the system.
Does that mean 1 or 2 or more seasons of exploration?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put an exact timeline on it, but I would think at least another season to actually pin this thing down, which we kind of thought we would do this season. And even though we've drilled more than we set out to drill, the system has thrown more at us than we thought it had to throw. So a good problem to have.
I cannot imagine keeping the market happy is an easy job, especially when you, again, as I mentioned, you get up there in valuations. It's you having a higher valuation, obviously good on one side because it keeps financing costs lower, but also challenging on the other side, because if you think about keeping the market happy, or even if you start thinking about a takeover price with a decent premium is already probably, and I'm speculating, those are the forward-looking statements that I mentioned. It's really just a guess, but let's say already in the $1 billion+ dollars. I know that a lot of the shareholders wouldn't be happy to let it go for less than that. And then there's capex that, again, we haven't it's way too early, but speculating is likely not going to be a small number, and a gut feeling guess would put it above $1 billion too, because it's a large project. And I mean, I don't even think if I have a question here, but those are some of the thoughts that I've been having as to what some of the challenges might be as to being an explorer with a very high market cap. And you're probably thinking among those same lines. So I suppose you can talk to me about that.
I mean, yeah, from our point of view at present, it just allows for non-dilutive financing. It's we're in an enviable place in the space, and we're certainly grateful for that. And yeah, with for example, the recent raise that you mentioned, that gives us basically another season of aggressive exploration, in addition to already having a strong treasury prior to the raise. And so, we're able to put our heads down and sort of weather the storm and continue to build value out there and de-risk the assets and hopefully discover more. So, no, I think it puts us in a pretty good place.
But in terms of, yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So, and then in terms of, looking at relative valuation to other explorers and that kind of thing, I personally, granted, we don't have a published resource out, but I mean, given the scale of the intersections that we're having, the consistency between them, and the footprint of the mineralized system that we have established, I look over the fence at the few other companies that have similar market caps to us now, and I'm emboldened. I think that it's, I think that we're in a fantastic place, and I think that there's a long way to go.
It's probably also too early to speculate about the who of the whole story. As in, who steps in to buy? Is it one of your neighbors? Is it one of your shareholders who I mean, they have a that special number of 9.9% that everybody really loves to see on there. But I guess that's too early. Have you thought about those about something along those lines?
I mean, of course, it's something that we pay attention to, but ultimately, it's also something we can't rely on. And so we're driving this ahead. We're starting to take steps down the development path ourselves, just in terms of, I mean, they're very nascent steps, but figuring out, okay, what will a layout look like? What kind of baseline work do we need to do? We've already started on a lot of that baseline work. So, we have to continue to build value intrinsically without just saying, okay, let's just hope that somebody comes in and makes a move on us. And so that's, we've got our heads down. We're focused on building what looks to be, one of the better gold assets ever to be found in the Yukon forward-looking statement and backward-looking statement. I mean, it's a rare discovery, and we'd be foolish to not to try to advance and de-risk it.
This is really just one thing that, like, only you would say one of the maybe better. Like, if this was another CEO, they would be screaming off the tops that this is the best thing since sliced bread. So this is kind of amusing to me, knowing how you deal with these things, and that's something I do like about you, of course. But so basically, you're saying you have the readiness and desire to develop this thing yourself if nobody, like, if nobody wants to value it properly. Exactly.
And it's I think there's a sweet spot that is often found and often missed in acquisition deals, where companies with expertise and cost of capital can make a lot more of a discovery like this than a company with that has to build a team that has a far worse cost of capital. They can still build a lot of value that way, and that's how mining companies get made. So that's certainly a feasible path. But yeah, there are groups out there that for which this discovery would be worth a lot more than it would for Snowline driving it forward. And so the sweet spot, I guess, is where Snowline shareholders find some premium, and the ultimate acquirer obviously gets a discount and still makes a handsome return on their investment. So in a hypothetical M&A space, that's kind of where we're driving towards. But ultimately, our road there is just moving this thing ahead. Building the strong relationships that we are building in the Yukon, and putting the pieces in place so that we can pull the trigger on this.
What about personally? Because you yourself, you were brought in, you grew up in the business of like exploration, being there, boots on the ground and all that. Like, did you want to build a mine in your lifetime?
I mean, I didn't even want to start a junior exploration company, so I'll do what I have to. But I do see an appeal to it. I think that in building Snowline, we've built an incredible team, and we are building something that is genuinely good for the Yukon. So, I didn't grow up dreaming about digging holes in the ground, but I see the value add here, and that's exciting. And I see the contributions that we're making to the territory and to the industry. And, if we can continue that path, then I'm all for it.
If you can continue the path, is probably an interesting route to go down to, because it's a couple of companies making big noises there. It's you, Fireweed Metals, and so on and so forth. Are you guys close in talking about, obviously, infrastructure, because that's the main thing when someone mentions, great discovery, but in the middle of nowhere. Is that something you discuss with your neighbors?
It is, yeah. And, I think that either company have, in this specific case, each of us have some very intriguing geology that could likely sustain itself for where it is. And so, I mean that from an economic standpoint. And so, that said, the fact that we are near to each other, there are obvious synergies, and if one goes ahead, then the other can go ahead much more easily. And so there are certainly ways to work together, and certainly conversations to be had. And they've been Fireweed have been fantastic neighbors to date. And I'm hoping that the combined presence out there can really build a strong economic backbone for the territory.
We might be going a little bit off topic here, but is there anyone else in the Yukon who's attracting your attention? Because this seems to be a very, an interesting mineral camp in the making.
Yeah, I mean, everything in the Yukon is kind of attracting my attention. I think Snowline illustrates what was kind of realized during that last boom in like 2010, 2011, but maybe it was realized a little too heavily that, the Yukon has a lot of geological potential, and so much was thrown at it in that era that I think too many people got burned. Too many people weren't really thinking from an exploration mind frame, and had the idea that just land in the Yukon was going to produce wild mineral deposits. And so it's been dialed. Well, we've been in the whole market, not just the Yukon, has been in a brutal place for much of the past decade. But Snowline shows that, okay, that enthusiasm is not entirely misplaced. The Yukon is still very prospective. And so there are a whole bunch of companies that have launched and are looking at these reduced intrusion style systems. Sitka was out there before us, finding some really good things. Rakla and Onyx have both materialized in the vicinity to further explore this Tombstone plutonic belt that stretches across central Alaska and the Yukon. And then you have other companies like, Attack they were bought out and have become Cascadia, looking at some interesting copper porphyry stuff. And so I think the Yukon in general is extremely prospective. I wouldn't be surprised to see a few more great discoveries come out of it. I'd certainly be happy to see it.
It's funny when people talk about the Yukon as like a one place, but there's a website called something like the real size of countries, and I believe you can also drag provinces, and it's larger than a lot of countries out there as a province. So there's a whole lot of potential there. You yourself, you have some interesting projects that are obviously not your focus now because you're focusing on the discovery, but is there you're probably thinking about it, but is there any work going on in on the other projects that might or might not contain other metals?
A bit. We've got certainly in some cases the gold targets themselves have potential byproducts, like on the Tosh project, for example, in the Southwest Yukon. In-surface grab samples, we've also seen a good silver values there. I think the best grab sample had like 1.1 kilograms in like a 3-gram gold grab sample. So 1.1 kilogram silver, and closer to kind of our flagship projects. Our URSA project has an interesting base metal anomaly that's long been sort of a topic of contention, both internally to me and amongst the team. Of is this just a big geochemical anomaly, or is this something? It sort of straddles the line between geological curiosity and world-class base metal system. I mean, it is the Selwyn Basin. It's some of the biggest zinc deposits out there, like Howard's Pass, Faro, and then of course, fireweed zinc or metals are getting into some fantastic mineralization to our south. So there is a potential for that kind of base metal or deposit on our claims, not just on the URSA project, but elsewhere. It is a very similar package of rocks that's kind of wrapped around and even intruded by the rogue intrusions. But right now, our primary base metal targets are on URSA. They haven't been our main focus at all, but we have been kind of limping them along off the side of the desk, and they remain of interest.
I understand that a spin out process is lengthy and not easy and expensive in lawyer fees and all that type of thing. But is that something you might consider for the near future? Let's say next year, the year after that.
On that time frame, I wouldn't write it off. Right now, it's not in the immediate cards. We're an exploration company still, even at Valley, but there may come a time, circling back to our earlier conversation, where Valley becomes less of an exploration target and then much more of a development target. And as I said, we're already putting the groundwork into place to try to have those conversations intelligently and as productively as possible. And so, at that point, it may make sense. We have a very exploration-focused team. We need a development-focused team to build the thing. So, it's I think looking forward, that makes a lot of sense on the horizon. But for now, we're still just exploring.
Right. And as you said, it takes at least one more season of exploring before you can do much of anything. Official resource estimate, and then you can start thinking about these things as secondary or tertiary objects in the company. Your exploration season ends in what, 2 weeks now? Maybe 3 if you push it, I believe. What's the game plan for the winter, and what comes after that?
Yeah, so we'll have a trickle of results coming in for a fair bit into the winter. We'll be digesting those, and it's actually kind of a nice aspect of seasonal exploration, is being able to get the most out of your data and figuring it out, and then setting the pieces in place for a big season next year. So there's we've been doing a lot of extensive surface exploration on other targets. I mentioned the drilling on a few others as well. But we're certainly going to have a full plates headed into 2024. So
in terms of news release activity, you do expect to stay active, sort of on a schedule of every 2 weeks or so?
It won't be a strict schedule, I don't think, but we'll see how long it takes to digest everything that we've thrown at the labs, and go through it and get it out. From there, in these past couple of seasons, we've been fortunate to pretty much have continuous news flow through the winter.
Yeah, well, as I said, since last time we spoke, about 30 news releases, so that is something. And those are really mostly assays, or there's some other stuff happening in between. Okay, and then the drill program next year, what is that? Any idea of what that might look like in terms of size? The timing too, you can talk to me about, but the exploration season is rather short there, so I guess that's already answered. But size.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be looking to kick off likely in May, towards the end of the month, and right now our baseline is just what we did this year, which we're actually over 20,000 meters of drilling now. So we would be looking at something like that, but we could very easily scale that up. Well, I shouldn't say easily; it'll be a process, but we've done harder things already. So we're looking at potentially adding more. But even with that with 20,000 meters, we can do a lot. That would be, and really the allocation of things and the whether or not and the degree to which we scale up depends on these forthcoming results and what we see, and that'll inform our strategy going forward. But ultimately, we're looking at advancing Valley, obviously, and we're looking at making additional discoveries out there. Valley is a great proof of concept that this regional scale idea that we launched the company around holds water, and also, at least as far as the back of our envelopes show, it's a profitable mine, and that's can flag that under forward-looking statements as well. But just the metallurgy that we're seeing, the grade distribution, the continuity of grade, highest grades near surface in a very nice geometry for a single pit, basically encapsulating most of the system. It checks every box that we want to see, and so that serves as a driver for infrastructure. And so we can almost start thinking about it like a mine, and the best place to look for another mine is in the head frame of one. And so it basically lowers the bar by apparently or ostensibly clearing the infrastructure hurdles there. And so if there's a road there, if there's a mill there, if there's power there, then you don't need necessarily another valley for it to be an economically interesting or profitable discovery. So by proving the potential and reducing the bar, it makes us that much more keen to continue to look at the district. And we think that we are just scratching the surface with Valley.
It's interesting coming from you, though, looking for the best place to look for a mine is in the shadow of a head frame. That's not how you found Valley in the first place.
No, everyone's looking in the shadow of head frames. So it's good to try to find the next head frame as well. But certainly there's wisdom in that saying that you find something big and it's probably not isolated.
No, I get it totally makes sense. But as you mentioned, though, drill season not as long. You said end May, so that's June, July, August, September, 4 months.
In October, yeah.
Yeah, it's rather short-ish. So would it make sense to get maybe more drills on site next year, or is that dependent on the results as well?
It certainly makes some sense. And we had one roving drill, which we could, bring home, I guess, depending on how results look, or we might want more down there. It's just going to be a matter of balancing the people and drill availability. And but I agree, we're already making a lot of those 5 months and the long daylight that we have to go 24/7 out there. Ramping up is certainly on our radar as a way to make the most of a season.
Okay. Are deeper drill holes on your radar as well?
Some, yeah. We've on the success of hole 39, unexpected success of hole 39 at depth. We've continued to run, based on our existing drill plan and the holes we had laid out. Some of those offer a test of that ground as well. So we'll be continuing to test that area at depth and others where it makes sense. Our primary, we won't necessarily be going super deep. Like sub-kilometer stuff is probably not going to affect the overall mine plan at this point. But still, getting into that zone at 500 meters is interesting and certainly adds a lot to the equation. So we'll do it on an as-needed basis. Our primary targets are very shallow and near surface, which is a great place for them to be. But where we can add value and where we continue to build out those systems that are open at depth, it makes a lot of sense too.
Okay. But basically, drilling is going to be the name of the game next year in terms of you're not doing any more like geophysics or any more recovery studies or something along those lines.
No, we're doing all that stuff. We'll be doing, we'll still be doing baseline surface geochem on some areas. We'll be doing soils prospecting, mapping, geophysics, you name it. Like we have a huge area, that rogue plutonic complex alone, and that's just one of several projects that are all very large in that area. That's a 60 by 30 kilometer geophysical feature that's formed by all these little intrusives popping through and cooking up the crust. And so we've got a lot left to explore there. Valley wasn't an obvious intrusion, and there may well be others out there that just aren't too obvious. Some of them stick out on the mountaintops; they've been known about for decades, and others are just hiding in the valleys. And so yeah, we've got a lot of work left to do to try to find these things. We've got a lot of drilling to do, not just on Valley, but on others to test them out. And then when mentioning like metallurgical work and that sort of a thing, our initial metallurgical results for Valley were fantastic, but we have more work to do to better see if we can improve on those and better constrain recoveries of different processes and that sort of thing to ultimately inform the mine plan. And that leads back to conversations about, okay, what baseline do we need in place? And it all kind of fits together in terms of building the picture out there of what we need to do now to make sure that we're on the path towards development.
But you already went from 88 to 96%. Where's more growth? What do you want to do? 99%?
Sure, why not? And then there are other tests too, like basically figuring out rock properties and rock hardness, and there you might find a balance in terms of okay, what, like for leaching, which it looks to us like this high grade stuff would not be heap leached. It would probably go to a mill either through flotation or CIL. Both of those had very good recoveries. Obviously higher capex, but when you're looking at the scale of this thing and the grades of this thing, it makes sense to spend that money up front to get a lot more back in return. But on the lower grade, and we don't know where those cutoffs are either on the what goes to a mill and what goes to a leach pad, and we don't know what the ultimate cutoff grade is. But if we're looking at that sort of a thing, then you need to optimize. Okay, well, and actually for the mill, for that matter, you need to figure out how much energy you're putting in to crush up these rocks and to what size. And there's a trade-off there with a different crush size to get to the recovery that you want. And so and that's especially true with heap leaching, where there are mines where and of a similar type to Valley, where you'll recall from our earlier conversation, just like these tens of thousands of quartz veins, and in this case they're even cross-cutting, and the gold is in those quartz veins. It's fairly competent rock otherwise, but when you break it up, at least in other systems, and we'll see if this proves to be the case at Valley, it preferentially breaks on those veins, which are just zones of weakness in the rock. And then so you're preferentially exposing the gold. And so you ultimately don't have to break the rock up that much in certain scenarios. And so, that's part of just one example of the testing. And so, like, does it make sense to crush it down and make sure you get all the gold out? It's going to cost more in terms of your energy input and the capex required to support that energy input, but you get more gold. Or does it make sense to leave a bit of gold on the table, do it hyper cheap, just let the rocks fall apart as you're chucking them over to the pad and go from there. So that remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, I guess that also depends on how much gold you're producing each year, though, right? I think that there was an independent report. You did not commission that. It came out as a research report, and they were speculating something along the lines of, I believe, 500,000 ounces or something along those lines. Is that? I assume you saw that number. So does that number shock you, or did you have any thoughts around that you can share with me?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to have thoughts around that at this point, at least not publicly. There have been 3 analysts who have initiated coverage on the story, and so as part of that, they make their own resource models, and they make their own production profiles and try to calculate a net asset value based on all that. And ultimately, a 500,000 ounce per year production would put a system into a tier 1 category, I suppose. It's certainly among the better mines out there, and I suppose it depends on how big of a shovel you have, but certainly there's a large footprint of very well mineralized material at Valley, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's it certainly looks to be one of the better projects in the exploration and development pipeline right now globally. So I'll save any comment on what I think the production profile looks like for when we get there. But but ultimately, I'm very happy with what we have at Valley.
I'm not trying, but I am sort of setting up alley oops for you, and you're not like, if this was another promotional CEO, they would absolutely go for a slam dunk, say something crazy out here that would get them in trouble. So I appreciate your reasonableness, if that's a word. But anyways, all the work that you want to do next year, all permits wise, everything else is in check. First Nations, government, greenies, everybody's happy down there, up there.
Not everyone is happy everywhere, I don't think, but nothing specifically to do with our project. Yeah, I mean, we're permitted to keep on going out there. We have, we've been in communication with First Nations from prior to the inception of the company, and building strong relationships there. We have nice economic partnerships that we've launched into with the Development Corporation of the Nashonak First Nation. So we're on the right path, I would say. And, obviously not obviously, but we are pre any kind of formal impact benefit agreement, but we're also an exploration stage company. So it's a goal we're working towards. And I would say we're on the right track there. So at this stage, we're good to keep on pressing. And I think that we've set things up to really be able to drive this thing forward and to make something that's beneficial across the territory.
Right. And then, well, money wise would obviously be my next question, but I covered that at the beginning. You have about $44 million in cash. That's gonna take you well into. I mean, it's gonna help. You're gonna be able to complete next year, I assume, without having to raise money. That's just an assumption, but you can talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assumption. If you look at our current exploration burn, and that's on 4 drills in a pretty aggressive season. What we have in the treasury plus what we have in warrants that are in the money, which is about 18 million. That doesn't touch on the options, but that's a little more complicated because not all of them are vested, et cetera. But at least in the warrants, those are expiring by. I think the last ones are early next August, and a lot of those we're expecting to have that money potentially even prior to next season. And so that at the current rate, that could get us through 3 more exploration seasons. But obviously with an eye towards ramping up, it still, we would have to ramp up in a pretty dramatic fashion to be cash crunched before the end of next season.
But I guess the saying goes that in the exploration space, you take money when it's there, not when you need it. But in your case, you've sort of brought up this whole company since listing. Money has just literally always been there. You just had to say the word, and it's always been there. So I don't think I have a question around that either. But oftentimes I would talk to CEOs, and they would say, "Look, like, we're fully funded, but if there's an opportunity, we're not going to say no to money." Will you say no to money?
We've said no to money multiple times, for better or worse. And we've cut back various raises that we've taken, but we have raised money, when it was there as well. So I guess kind of walking a line. When you recognize that you have something very interesting, I mean, it's you don't want to just dilute yourselves to nothing right out of the gate, but at the same time, money is hard to come by in this space, and you've got to recognize when you have an opportunity. So, I guess we'll continue to assess situations as they arise, and hopefully the money continues to come as it has. And but we're certainly prepared now for a long dry spell to be able to keep on exploring. And hopefully that dry spell doesn't materialize.
Well, you're always hoping for that. Why I'm bringing this up is because a brief and an uneducated look at your finances shows me that your drilling expenses obviously more than doubled. If you compare first half of last year, first half of this year, obviously because of what you just told me, this is also where the money should go. But you've also expanded the team quite a lot. You've grown corporately quite a lot, if you will, since we last spoke. I also see you often at conferences and so on and so forth. And with that, your operating expenses have also grown, comparing just the 2 first halves of this year and last year. Your wages and salaries have almost tripled. Professional fees, consulting fees, more than tripled. Investor relations spend is up 60%, and so on and so forth. Obviously, the market cap is up to go with that too. So I'm not alleging anything anything wrong here, anything along those lines. But I just want to ask you whether you feel fully grown as a company now, or do you expect it to keep do you expect the spending to keep growing, the operational spending?
Well, I mean, we started last season with a single drill. We hadn't made the big discoveries at Valley yet. We basically just drilled 4 holes into the edge of the system, so we were very much early stage company, and arguably pre-discovery, depending on where you define the actual discovery of Valley. And yeah, so ramping up to 4 drills this season certainly makes an impact, and we need more crew, we need more people, and we have a better story to tell, and all the more reason to tell it. And so yeah, and so that's kind of the discussion that I guess I'm having internally when you in response to the or prior to, but my answer to your earlier questions when you're talking about what are we looking at for next season. So yeah, we have a fantastic team in place, a really great group of people, very smart, very driven, and doing a lot out there. And so with the status quo, we can accomplish a lot. But yeah, if we're looking at ramping up, then we're looking at more growth, and then also looking down that path towards development. There are big pieces of the puzzle, mostly the entire puzzle, missing at that point. Not the entire puzzle. We have some actually fantastic consultants helping us on that path too. But in terms of the expertise for that advanced stage work, that's another place that we would be looking to grow. So no, we're not done our growth as a company. Yes, it gets more expensive when you start to really put things into a higher gear. We are still very conscious of our costs. We're still focusing on, keeping per unit costs down and being efficient in everything that we do. And we've actually had better efficiency this year than we had last year. Some of that's due to economies of scale. Some of that's due to measures that we've taken to cut down costs. So we're still very cognizant of not just spraying money everywhere because we have a strong treasury, but certainly growing costs money.
That's exactly what I was getting to. Because you have a lot of money, companies tend to start, getting fancier flights to conferences and stuff like that. Not something you have ever done or shown, potential for, but that's sort of why I'm bringing it up.
We were sitting in the back row at Beaver Creek next to the bathrooms. I had people butts in my face when I was trying to do the presentation for Beaver Creek. So I think we're still holding steady.
I agree. And I check these things, marketing spend and all these things. They're definitely not egregious. I talk to a lot of companies, and a lot of companies would quickly go above $1 million in terms of marketing spend and all these things. And you have a full-time IR person, a lady that does very good work, may I say, as well. So I think you're okay on that front. What are you doing for the rest of it in terms of marketing conferences? What are you using to tell the story? Are you looking to expand sort of European followership and ownership, or are you focusing on one specific subset of the world?
No, we're sort of casting nets into different demographics and different geographical locations, as well as different pools altogether. We have always had a strong retail base, and we hope to continue to keep retail informed and excited. And I mean, it's we still who we are, and but yeah, we've also put effort into to looking at some of the large pools of capital that are floating around in big funds and institutions and that sort of thing, where we sort of turned a corner in terms of what we have discovered. And I think have become more attractive, less as a speculative early stage story and more of a, I don't know if you can call an exploration stock blue chip, but we've got we've got some, not just wind in the sails, but a foundation of strong discovery with real value in the ground. Obviously we're pre-resource, but with results that are pretty unique out there. So yeah, I think that allows us to tap into additional pools of capital that'll hopefully come to the benefit of everybody.
Last time we spoke at the end, I asked you or maybe I didn't, but I did want to ask you. I think I did. What the sort of what keeps you up at night? This is sort of an obligatory question that I ask because at the beginning I mentioned that this is one of the highest risk industries out there. But oftentimes during these interviews, you talk to a CEO. Their job is to talk about the good stuff about a company, but nothing's perfect out there. So, what is anything that keeps you up at night? Anything that you keep thinking about?
Any number of things, really. Just making sure that the field program is going smoothly and safely, and that's fortunately, I can sleep reasonably well most nights, knowing that we have a really strong team out there who have yet again set a even higher bar for themselves. So that's a big one. And then from a more corporate standpoint, I think it really just comes down to market conditions and eking out a path forward for this system. There are a lot of variables that are within our control and a lot of variables beyond our control, and it's hard not to get them confused sometimes, at least in terms of what's stressing you out. But just making sure that you're prepared for any number of situations and setting yourself up for success is, I think, the way to make it so you can sleep at night.
What about geologically though? Are you thinking about do the grades pick up at depth? Do we keep expanding this thing and something along those lines?
Yeah, I'll realize that I'm spinning my wheels unnecessarily over like, should this drill hole be in here or up there, or that sort of a thing. But ultimately geologically, no, this is like I said earlier, we couldn't have designed much better of a system than what we found at Valley. We knew where we were when we started exploring in terms of a high bar. It's a remote location, but it's not inaccessible. And we've found something better than and I had high hopes going out there. So geologically, I think, at least in the case of Valley, we're not done. Like I say, we're still exploring, we're still figuring it out. But based on what we know about it already, that is about as stress-free as you can get.
Mm. And then First Nations, you touched upon it, but that's some a thing of the past, or is it a thing of the past and the present and the future that you keep thinking about?
That's all three. First Nations are an important part of the picture, and building a company that's beneficial to them, and having strong open communication, and understanding where they're coming from, what their concerns are, what not just concerns, but what their hopes are too, and seeing where things come together, seeing where concerns can be addressed, seeing avenues for mutual growth through a discovery like this. That's a key part of our focus.
Mm. Okay, I think we talked through a lot. I think I went through most of my points that I had over here. Is there anything that you came here hoping to talk about, but I'm failing to bring up?
I know you've done an admirable job of navigating through a lot of different terrain in a short amount of time. So thanks, Antonio.
Thank you so much for investing your time in me. I'm hoping for future updates.
That sounds great. And thanks for having me back on.